Hey, everybody, I'm Deb Gabor. I'm the host of Brand New World, the author of Branding is Sex and Irrational Loyalty. And we have a very special Brand New World for everybody today, the last Brand New World broadcast of the year. I'm super excited to be having my friend and incredible agency leader, brand advisor, Jackie Bebenroth, joining us today to talk about change marketing. And as we close up 2021 and we come into 2022, which I'm sure everybody's got a new year, new you plan coming up, either for yourself or for your brand. It's going to be great to hear from her a little bit about like what is change marketing, what is the model underlying that, and how can organizations harness the power of this opportunity to achieve full potential for their brands. So with that, I'm going to bring Jackie into the room. And let's introduce everybody to Jackie. Hello, good morning. How are you?
Hi, Deb. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. You're not only just an incredible brand and marketing guru, you are one of my favorite people on this earth and a great friend. And I'm so glad that you were willing to join us this morning. I always like to start this out because Brand New World is a lot about not just me ranting about branding, but also sharing my incredible ecosystem and network with all of the other people out there. And so I'm so pleased to have you here, but sometimes it's fun to like take a walk down memory lane and let everybody know, how do we know each other?
We met in Austin, Texas at an EO event. And I somewhat remember dancing the night away with you. Although that was one of those occasions, very rare occasions for me where I had to apologize. I think I apologized to you next because I think I was a bit overserved, but I remember having a blast nonetheless.
Yeah,
So
well, first of all, it was an EO event and it was in Austin, Texas. So the recipe was right for being overserved. And I am generally not a person who dances in public. So I must have also been overserved, or maybe I'll say it was bad ice or something like that, that sent me over the edge. But anyway, we actually worked together, where it was an unusual arrangement for me. I was a client, right?
yeah, and frankly, one of my favorites.
Oh.
So, no, really, Deb. I mean, it's so great working with marketers, but not just marketers, people who understand branding at a very intuitive level. And you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Intuition is very underrated when it comes to brand strategy. And I think we clicked on that level, and you just brought out the best in me and my team. So I thank you for that.
Yeah. And today, as I was obsessively checking the weather out in Utah to see like how much snow is dumping out there while I am sitting in my home office here in Austin, Texas, I recall a fun skiing and snowboarding day that started off not so fun, where we were like bivouacking on the hill with zero visibility out there at I think we
Oh,
were at
Snowbird.
Snowbird. Yeah,
Yeah,
we were at Snowbird. And
yeah.
I think we were after that run that took us like, I don't know, an hour to get down the mountain because we couldn't even see each other and we were afraid that we were falling off a cliff. We went to the lodge and I think I was searching out adult beverages at 10 a.m.
Oh,
To,
yeah.
to help us recover from that. So we've shared some incredible adventures, and I have always admired your spirit of adventure and your willingness for fun, but also you're doing some incredible things right now. Why don't you let everybody know, what are you currently obsessed with?
So, professionally speaking, I have really taken a deep dive into the concept of change this year, and specifically this model called the Transtheoretical Model of Change. And I just love saying it. Transtheoretical Model of Change. And it's way more simple than it sounds. But when I was first introduced to it by my coach, it just everything clicked for me. All of my personal changes I've been making over the years, all of the changes I've been advocating for with my clients, and the understanding of this model has really allowed me to better connect with people at very specific times in their change mindset, and made me a more effective marketer, and ultimately allowed me to make some personal changes in my life that I've been struggling with. So.
What are some of the personal changes that you think have been informed by this model that you recently became aware of?
Oh, I didn't realize this was this kind of
I,
podcast.
I, I didn't either, but here we go. If I don't make you cry, then I haven't done my job as the Oprah of business.
So I think one of the things I've really worked over my personal career is just in um, I want to eat better.
Hmm.
And not to go too far back in the history of my life, but I was raised at a very specific part of my life by a single mom. We were eating a lot of convenience foods, and I kind of grew up eating just like many of us in the 80s and early 90s, just kind of like eating TV dinners and things like that. And that carried me through into my early 20s, and I wasn't feeling good, right? And then I married a chef.
Yes.
And so now I'm introduced to all of these amazing fancy foods, right? And I just have always struggled with what are the best foods for me and my body. And I've gone through all of these different exploratory experiments. We can talk a little more about this today. The average American, one study shows, will do 126 fad diets over the course
What?
of their lifetime. Yeah, that averages out to two a year in their adult life.
Oh my
So
goodness,
for me, I don't know about you, like
126.
keto, juice cleanses, all of those things. And every time I would try something new, I would last for a couple weeks and then I would feel like a failure because I couldn't do it long term. But if I think about that, those actions over time, it's kind of like putting it in a mindset instead of failure and shame, this sort of fail forward concept of like, oh, I learned something from this. I'm gonna take it into the next thing I do. So now this year is the first year in my life that I really feel like I'm making informed choices. I'm not driven by my cravings, and I'm really feeding my body well, and I feel great.
Mhm.
But that was a transformation over like the last 20 years. It wasn't an overnight before and after change. And so my understanding of the trans-theoretical model of change really kind of helped me come to that epiphany and feel really good about all of these actions and experiments that I've done over the years. They're not failures. They're lessons
Sure.
learned, you know?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And we're going to get into that and, talk a little bit about your fascination with change. But
Mhm.
I relate to this idea of, failing forward and all of that. Everything that I had been taught about change, which we learn about change, I learned about change in business school. I learned about change through all of the sort of behavioral studies. I learned about change in marketing. And the world seems to suggest that change is something that is binary, that it's like flipping
Mhm.
a switch.
Totally.
And I think what I've learned from you in preparing for this is that it isn't. And I want to share that with everybody and also show how this applies to business and to marketing and also to life. So tell me a little bit about like this foundation here. Like what is the background on why you are so fascinated by change beyond just your own personal experience here? What's so fascinating about this topic for you?
So when early in my career, when I was a copywriter, this is about 20 years ago, I I used to use the word change in marketing, and my creative director would come to me and redline it always. Never use the word change.
Why not?
Why not? It scares people. And when people are intimidated, they're not going to convert.
Hmm.
So instead, try words like evolution or transformation, less scary than the word change.
Hmm.
And I was always very intrigued by the concept of that. Are people truly afraid of change? I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because this notion of change to some extent suggests maybe even subliminally or subtly that there's something wrong with the current state,
Right.
right? When you suggest to somebody that there needs to be a change, it almost assumes that whatever the current state is or what the reality is not okay. And do you think that that's part of it?
Yes, but I think in some ways that could be an advantage depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So, like, for example, studies have shown that executives make decisions more so on the fear of the status quo than they do on the rainbows and roses that are promised in an optimistic future. So, if you're trying to sell something into an executive, it's important to help ground the conversation in what happens if you don't make a change today?
Oh, okay.
And
So kind
how
of
you really
creating FOMO
Yeah,
or creating a vision for here's how the world could look differently if you don't act.
right, but more importantly, what are the risks of staying the same? What are the
Mhm.
risks of complacency? And there can be some fear-mongering in that, but there's nuanced ways to do it where it's very, very effective. I use it in recruitment, actually.
Oh,
Don't tell my future candidates. But when I'm trying to get somebody to take a new journey here with a small, take a risk on a small agency, maybe get paid a little less than your
mhm.
corporate gig. What are the risks of staying at your current job? And then I'll get them talking about that, and then they'll start to be like, "Oh," you know? And it
Yeah.
helps them make the move more so than me promising a bright future. That's really not necessarily proven.
Right. You can't really promise anybody a bright future. That's all kind of self-created, and people have to want to feel invested in making whatever transformation that is, or taking the first step and being on that journey to get to, the fulfillment of their own potential. It's interesting to think about that. When we do brand positioning, one of the questions that we ask is, what's at stake here for you? What happens if you don't move? What happens if things remain the same? And it's interesting what you say that, most executives need to be able to envision what the world looks like if they maintain the status quo. It's subtle, and I think that a lot of marketers can have a good takeaway from that when they think about how they are positioning and messaging. I want to talk about this idea of change marketing, which is it's a brand new concept to me. Just this whole category of change marketing. Let's talk about what that is, because I think that there's a lot of great takeaways here.
Yeah, so, um, as I'm sure you know, there's a sort of a sector of marketing agencies that are really committed to behavior change marketing. And quite often, these agencies specialize in areas of social change and equity. So they're working with big things, like addiction, and they do a lot of PSAs and things like that, and try to get people to move into healthier, better decisions for themselves. I think there's opportunity for us to broaden that definition, and any brand that claims to be a transformational brand, I think falls under this idea of change marketing. And the qualifier for that, for me, is if you not only have to invest, you expect your customers to invest money, sure, in a transaction, but also time, their time commitment. So when you have a situation where you're selling somebody on you're converting them on time and money, you in essence fall into the category of change marketing. EO, I think, is a good example of that. I wouldn't call that behavioral change, but
Mhm.
you are changing someone not only into embracing the idea of joining an awesome organization for entrepreneurs, but then they're being changed throughout the EO experience. And in order to achieve member lifetime value, you really have to work those connections and their stages of change and meet them where they're at.
I think it's really difficult to sell transformation. I think about the brand strategy work that we do, and sometimes we have brands that show up as the magician archetype, which the magician archetype is great for brands that promise to transform something. Maybe they're transforming the state of matter, or they're transforming a business, or they're transforming an individual, or whatever. Selling a promise of transformation, it seems like selling something that's empty.
Oh,
And it,
totally.
yeah. So how do organizations navigate that, where they want to create a rosy future for people? How do you message future transformation, which, when you gave the example of how you use this idea in recruiting, you can't really promise a rosy future. Like, how do you actually do that?
Well, first of all, stop using that word so much, people. Like, I mean, that word is so overused, it's almost like wallpaper now.
Oh,
And
transformation is on, let's see, transformation, solutions, quality. Like people rarely have the faculties to discern the truth about all of those words. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. So, like, three cheers for not using that word. But what should people use?
um, I believe that promising short-term change and quick wins is a good way to go, because if you think about the vocabulary of it, transformation happens through a series of changes to get there, right? So if we kind of frame conversations in that way, I'm more than happy to be sold to with like a quick win, a quick change. Like maybe I want to lose 2 pounds or 5 pounds or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess that's
sure.
why the weight loss companies, say like average weight loss 2.2 pounds per week or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's not transformation though, right? So just be real, because transformation, I think, it kind of it throws authenticity out the window. You
Mhm.
can't be authentic when you're promising transformation unless you're selling something that is really a long-term relationship and you're managing people's expectations accordingly.
Yeah, isn't all marketing about change? I mean, we're
Anyway,
trying to stimulate some kind of
change the
behavioral
brand of
change.
paper towels you use.
Yeah,
Right.
or, change the money from being in your pocket to, like, being handed to somebody. I don't know. All right, well, I wanna get back to the topic here. It is the trans-theoretical model of change. Like, I love big words, and I love models and things like that, but let's talk about what that actually is. Give us the mini psych PhD in the trans theoretical model of change so that we all have a baseline understanding of what that is.
Sure. So this is a model that was developed in the 70s by two psychologists who were studying why people quit smoking or don't quit smoking. And the output of that research was really the insight that people don't quit smoking unless they're ready to do so. Now, duh, right?
Seems basic, yeah.
Right. But what I love about this perspective is that now we have a model of intentional change. So there's a stage of change where someone, they've defined it as not ready. And once they get into getting ready, now we can have a conversation with people because we're moving along the mindset of their intent.
Mhm.
And so I want to talk today a little bit more about intention as marketers and how we can apply intention along this model to really connect with people where they're at versus just like trying to convince them of something they're not really ready to hear yet.
I,
Right?
I think that I think that's a good conversation because as a marketer, we sometimes assume that with marketing we can make people ready.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Actually, some of our brand strategy people at Soul are taking this brand strategy course with Scott Galloway, and I was reviewing one of the projects from one of our team members, and she showed me what Galloway talks about as the clock model of marketing, which is like pre-purchase, purchase, post-purchase, and it's all sort of, this endless virtuous cycle. And when I was thinking about it, a lot of the assumption there is that in that pre-purchase cycle that we can do things to make people ready. What are your thoughts on that? Because it sounds like you can't make people ready. People have to be ready to be ready.
Well, so this isn't, again, I talk a lot about expectation management, but we talk a lot to our clients about this because when they're trying to reach people in the not ready stage, they should never expect an action. It should be brand awareness only.
Mhm.
So that by the time they are ready to make a change, you've already been in their mind a couple times and they recognize you and they can recall that brand. Um, it's marketers make a mistake when they try to incentivize the not ready stage and have an expectation of conversion in that. People absolutely have to be in the getting ready or ready stages. Those are step 2 and 3 in order to get to conversion. When they're in
Mhm.
not ready, If you don't have the money for brand awareness, don't even waste your breath there. Just like hit people where they're at.
That's interesting because, one of the things that we say in branding is that the goal of branding is to be the top of mind brand in your category, because we know this. We do tons and tons of research. I think over the last 18 years, we've probably done, several million quantitative interviews to understand brand awareness and the connection to purchase. The strongest predictor of whether or not a brand will be purchased is if people can mention it off the top of their head. That doesn't necessarily suggest that also people are ready to use the brand if they're aware of it, because we see conversion models all the time that show here's how much brand awareness you have. Here's how that translates to consideration. People can be aware of, a total of 27 brands, but in any purchase consideration process, it's an average of 2.3 brands that they're considering. That's a massive drop off. So one of the questions that I have regarding this transtheoretical model of change is how can we recognize ready? Is there a way that we can recognize ready? How do we know when people are in the mindset?
I think the most straightforward way to recognize it is simply through search trends, right?
Mhm.
And because our firm is really rooted in wellness, nutrition, and wellness, we often see, and this is the part where people are localizing their search. They've moved from getting ready, which is like, am I gonna die from heartburn? They're just like
Dear
trying to
Dr.
figure out
Google,
like
do I
their
die
weather
from heartburn?
being right to doctors specializing in gut issues in Boise, Idaho. That is the difference between a getting ready prospect and a ready prospect. You can be in front of them in both stages through your strategic SEOs and search kind of stuff.
Sure. And the goal of search, and our last brand new world, we had an SEO expert on, and one of the things that we were talking about is that the goal of search is not to get your product or service or your brand on the first page of search. The goal of search is to be there at a time when people have a need. Like to be there when they have a need. And I guess if they're leaning forward with a very specific question, like where do I find somebody who specializes in gut issues in Boise, Idaho? Which I don't know why you chose Boise, but like we need to go there, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, but somebody who specializes in gut issues in Boise, Idaho, that is a person who is actually looking to have a question answered. And
Mhm.
so what I'm understanding from you is that demonstrates readiness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that I want to do is, because I interrupted you on this, you were sort of explaining the transtheoretical model of change, and it's a multi-step process. Give us like the whole thing. Explain the whole thing to us so that I want to go back to that, giving everyone a baseline understanding of what it is.
Okay. And my dogs might start barking in the middle of this, so I apologize.
Okay, well, that's great. I mean, Coco Kitty may jump up here at any moment and stick her head in my iced tea. It happens.
Okay.
Welcome to working from home, everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, first of all, the transtheoretical model of change is 5 stages. And the philosophy is this is very important, change is not linear, it's cyclical. So,
Okay.
what happens is that um, our expectation as a quick fix culture is that someone will go from before to after. So, we see then,
We
now.
get marketed that before and after stuff all the time, don't we?
Yeah.
I
But
can't
if
even tell you how many times I have like I think the greatest pitfall for me in the before and after is skincare.
oh man, I know. I know.
Yeah.
And um I do like the adaptation on that though, like how it's going, how it, that one
Mhm.
where it's like, here's how it's going,
Yeah.
because that then talks about the duration and the cycles that have happened in order to get there. So 5 steps. Number 1, not ready. Again, if you don't have the budget for brand awareness, ignore this stage. Do not go there. It's a waste of money. Stage 2, getting ready. This is where people are starting to do some research about the topic at hand. Stage 3 is ready. okay, so they've done their research, they know they need a solution, and they're actively vetting people who have or brands that have the products and services. So you certainly want to be there at that moment. Stage 4 is action. So the stage between ready and action, that's conversion.
Hmm.
And that is where most of us marketers focus, especially performance marketers. And that is not at all the end of the story.
Ah, okay. What's the rest of the story then?
This is the biggest opportunity I see for marketers. And as a content marketer, I'm especially a proponent of this. It's the maintenance stage. The maintenance stage is where someone has taken action, they've purchased the product or service, maybe they've invested some time in it, and then they just drop out. People start and stop things all the time. How do you maintain that relationship? How do you reactivate that? Because therein lies the most cost effective thing you can do to build your revenue. It's much more cost effective to upsell and reactivate your current client base than it is to acquire new customers, and we all know this,
Yeah, we
right?
know that. What do they say? The ratio is like it's 85 times cheaper
Yes.
to, market to somebody who already knows you, has experience and familiarity with your brand, than it is to go acquire a new customer. And today with the proliferation of markets and media and different ways to get in touch with people, and just the lowering of the barriers to entry to be a brand today,
Mhm.
make the whole idea of acquiring new customers really, really freaking scary to me.
Oh, absolutely. It is so expensive. And so reallocating that budget or a large percentage of that budget into, if you already have a really established customer base and you're having retention issues, moving some of that budget over there and really working to cultivate those relationships, that's going to have a higher ROI for you. Right. So we're big on maintenance stage, but man, it's like let me give you this example. I did Orange Theory Fitness. Have you ever done Orange Theory Fitness?
Yeah, I've been to a couple of classes, but I didn't keep up with it.
No. And did they send you any communication after that? It's kind of like I was there for 18 months. I
Hmm.
dropped out. They never asked me why. I never received any communication after that. I never received any type of reactivation incentives, so like there is a huge missed opportunity. And if their retention rate, is like 40% or whatever after a year, then they've got a 60%, you can resell those people in really creative, cool ways, understanding that change is cyclical.
Yeah,
They're
that's
going to come
interesting.
back
And I think the Orange Theory example is really interesting just because I had personal experience with it. So,
around.
I attended a couple of classes. Like I don't know, it was like a free week thing. And one of the things that I recognized about it, like I thought it was cool and I loved the workout. I felt like I didn't find my people there,
Sure.
and they did not, like, I'm not recalling that anybody even picked up the phone or sent me any kind of exit survey, or why did you do our 7-day trial and then not activate or whatever. On the side, I have this very, very good friend in Utah who is part of an Orange Theory group where they are this really super tight knit community,
Mhm.
and they all support each other and all that kind of stuff. Um, and to her, like, community is really, really important, and she needed the support of a community and actually feeling like she found her people. And I feel, I mean, she's a focus group of one, right? And I'm a focus group of one, but there's an interesting difference there. I was like, ooh, I want that. Orange Theory, had they done a good job of trying to understand what was the change that I, was seeking, and how did I want to be supported in that, maybe the local owners would have been able to, help me identify, like, well, you know what, Deb, there's a really, really good group that comes at 4:15 every day
Yeah.
who are people like you. We'd love
Mhm.
to invite you to come. It's interesting how many missed opportunities there are there. It just
Well,
it
you bring up a great point around community, Deb, because this is this like concept of belonging. I mean, this fits right into maintenance stage
Mhm.
for sure, because if the brand itself is not going to communicate, with people after they convert because they, ooh, we won, we got the conversion, right? If the people in the community can keep up in the relationship and the communication, that is a really great thing to invest in from a brand standpoint, because you've got your people doing your maintenance stage work for you, and you're not, in many cases, you're not even paying them to do so,
Yeah,
right?
that's awesome. I mean, that, talk about high ROI. If you can facilitate a community advocating for your brand, costs a whole lot less than acquiring new customers,
Right.
whole costs more than, sort of traditional retention marketing and things like that. So I see a lot of opportunities. What kind of brands specifically do you think are a good fit for this model of change marketing as you've explained it?
Membership brands. So, and I say that because membership brands are, by their very nature, designed to create change and impact in their members,
Mhm.
right? Whether that's through a forum or a learning event or, ongoing
Yeah,
experiences.
so that could be like an EO, Vistage,
Mhm.
YPO, like if you're part of like a big coaching community, things like that, right?
Yeah, and speaking of coaching communities, I look at the coaching community and consultants. By their very nature, they're working to create change and transformation
Mhm,
with people that they serve, right? And so that's an individual trying to influence change in an organization or with a person if they're working one-on-one. So those types of brands can really think about how they can move into maintenance stage after the initial coaching engagement. Maybe you invest in it's $5,000 for 3 months. Well, what happens after that initial program is complete? Do you
mhm.
move someone into a community? Do they move into a mastermind group or something like that? So we're looking at ways we can continue to add value after the initial thing is complete. Um, and obviously, movement brands, nutrition brands, wellness brands, things of that nature.
Mhm.
Absolutely. What's fascinating is I've been doing a lot of work in functional medicine this year. Thank you very much, by the
Yes,
way.
our mutual friend and now your client, yeah.
Yes. And what's interesting about functional medicine is that it requires a long term relationship to
Mhm.
achieve success versus conventional medicine. You walk in, you get a pill. Typically, you have a symptom, you get a pill for it, you walk out, and they want that transaction to happen as quickly as possible.
Sure.
So, as a society, we don't perceive medicine as a long term relationship with the doctor. It's more about a quick fix, and so functional medicine practitioners have that additional challenge of saying, "Listen, we're gonna be a partner here, right? And you're gonna work with me consistently." And so patient lifetime value is absolutely a thing in that industry compared to conventional medicine, where it's like, how can we get you moving through the system as quickly as possible?
Well, it's counterintuitive, right?
Yeah,
We have learned as a society that if you have something that ails you, that you get immediate relief from it. If you take a pill, you make an immediate, change your diet, change this activity or this behavior, put on this splint or whatever. So there's a lot that the functional medicine category needs to do in order to like just change these deeply ingrained expectations that we have of the entire category. So yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting. We had Dr. Tanisha on a couple of months ago, and she was talking about long-term transformation and long-term health, specifically for entrepreneurs and business leaders. But it's
right.
a really fascinating category. What are some of the things that as a marketer you recommend for brands that are like that, where they have to not only sort of dispel deeply ingrained expectations and just almost, I don't know, pathological memory of how things are supposed to happen? What are some of the things that you do?
So there's a couple things. So if we keep in mind this concept that change is cyclical, not linear, how can we look for opportunities where our current client or customer or patient base falls off? And how can we look for ways to get them back into the cycle of change? Right? So things like making sure you're surveying people upon their exit.
Hmm.
Um, and aside from that, like being proactive about it, surveying your client base or patient base about what it is you can help them do beyond the product or service. We did this interesting study this year on the functional medicine patient perception mindset. And we interviewed 500 functional medicine patients, and we said to them, um, can your doctor help you beyond your initial treatment plan? And almost all of them said, yes, I would like my doctor to help me beyond my initial, when I've experienced relief from whatever issue I came in for. And then the next question was, does your doctor offer supplemental products and services to help you achieve your ongoing wellness goals? And the majority said no, they don't,
Hmm.
right? So as a brand, if you just reach out and ask, like in this survey we asked and they said, I would like them to offer massage, Reiki, acupuncture, prepared foods, all of these like wellness related services. They were interested in buying, but the practices weren't offering, and they lost that revenue opportunity. They're leaving money on the table, right?
And, let's say, for instance, you're a functional wellness doctor and you have a practice that's, pretty focused, and you go out and you ask your clientele what they want from you. It doesn't necessarily say from a business strategy perspective that you have to build all those capabilities internally.
No.
People want to have that support long term in their life. You get credit for it if you pull together an ecosystem of providers and partners. You can do affiliate revenue share. You can do, referral. You can create a network of vetted partners who can be able to provide that kind of stuff. But what an opportunity to be the wellness practice, for instance, that's at the center of that ecosystem, who is bringing all of that together to support people in their long-term journey on the cycle of change, not this linear, step-by-step thing. It seems like an
Yeah.
incredible opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about case studies. What's an example of a brand that maybe could have embraced this model that didn't?
Um, so there's two brands that come to mind, just because they're just so prolific
Yeah.
right now, and especially in wellness and weight loss specifically. So let's talk about Noom for a minute. So have
Okay.
you tried Noom?
So no, I haven't. I haven't tried Noom. I I looked into it, and it was something that I got like halfway through the sign up process, and then the whole thing just felt like overwhelming and too invasive to me. I may not be the ideal customer for Noom, and also
Right.
I'm a very internally and intrinsically motivated human being.
Mhm.
And other people had told me about it. I just was like, this is not for me. So I haven't tried it, but I am familiar with the brand because we've worked with a number of brands, not in the same categories as you, but more sort of in the health technology space. So I'm very familiar with the brand, just, from having done a bunch of research on behalf of our other clients. But why don't you tell everybody just briefly, like, what Noom is and what that's about?
So Noom markets itself as a weight loss app. And it's one of those, calorie trackers, but it's got the added benefit of ongoing nutritional education as you go along the journey,
Hmm.
right? And there's a lot of people who have been very successful using Noom. Um,
I
they
think
do a
our
lot.
mutual friend Ami used Noom.
How'd it go for him?
It went really well. He lost
Yeah,
like 25 pounds. He looks
yeah,
great.
that's great. And there's a lot of things that Noom does right. I mean, the richness of the content, the credibility of their sourcing and their data. They also do a really nice job in body inclusivity, and making sure that you can be healthy at every size, and we're here to help you, really support your goals. Um, but where I found that they fell short, and of course, in my my own personal journey to learn how to feed myself right. I've tried Noom. Two things. Number one, there was a lot of AI and bots associated with the
Mhm.
experience that they were marketing as personal health coaching, which was really more of an automated canned response consistently. So
Mhm.
I hate it when brands say, take this live webinar and it's kind of pre-recorded, but they try to give you the impression that it's live.
Yeah.
Same thing with bots. If I'm talking to a bot, just let me know.
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. But if
Yeah.
you're telling me it's a real person, like, don't pass it along. Like, there's something in that that really wrecks trust, right?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Like I'm working on something right now personally about authority, and authority being sort of like the very human embodiment of the brand. There's so much technology out there, and we're doing so many things to like dehumanize the brand relationship. The fact that Meta now exists, and we're going to have the metaverse, and Nike just bought an online shoe brand which literally makes shoes for your metaverse avatar,
Yeah,
basically NFTs and things like that. We're putting more and more technology between us and our relationships and things like that. And authenticity it's interesting. There's just a lot of friction there.
sure.
I think it's interesting what you say about just being transparent about like, this is a bot. Like, hi,
Yeah,
I'm Cindy. I'm actually a bot, and I'm here just to provide you reminders to like, pay attention to what you're putting in your mouth right now, rather than
totally.
pretending to be a real human being. And a lot of that has to do with people's relationships with AI and what they refer to as the uncanny valley, which is this like little gap between what's real and what's not quite real that makes people very, very unsettled. And I think that the more and more we move things to a place where we're hiding behind a technologically rendered image of ourselves, moving through a world wearing Nike branded fake shoes, yeah. So like we could do a whole thing on authenticity, but it seems like authenticity is like, if you really want to move people through a cycle of change and get to them at the places where they drop off and get them like back to
Mhm.
where they need to be, you have to be authentic.
Yeah, and I think that could be automated to a point, right? And especially as I'm sure Noom is getting smarter by the day, so they're taking all these data points and they're doing really interesting things with them. What what really bothered me is when I did drop off because I suddenly had this like, oh, now I have a relationship with a bot kind of thing. And I didn't like it
Mhm.
for my own personal health and wellness.
Yeah.
But they immediately came back and tried to reactivate me. And what they did was they offered me to re-sign up for 90% off.
What?
Yeah,
They basically devalued the brand.
they devalued all of the content. And at that moment, I was like, well, if it wasn't worth the 90% more I paid for it, what the hell?
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And instead, what they could have said is, you know what? X% of people who go through this program, they stop doing it after this many weeks, and we're here to support them. And did you know that people who try it the second time, they have an X increase in success kind of thing. So they're applying change is cyclical, not linear, to their messaging, and that would have been much more likely to get me back than a discount.
Oh my gosh, that's like such a huge aha right there. Because
Mhm.
we have a tendency to want to treat those people who drop off as like, oh, we have to re-engage them. In email marketing, we call that the rescue email.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, like, just the
Totally.
whole idea that we call like, that we refer to it as rescue. Like,
Yeah.
no, 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 we're not rescuing them. I love what you said about messaging to people there, just saying, "Hey, we understand that this happens. Actually, you know what? You're not unlike a large majority of people here. And we're here to support you in this journey. And here's a vision for what you can look like when you're successful. Come back."
Mhm.
And people would be willing to pay for that, wouldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I think from this regard, And again, I'm not a behavioral change expert, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but
Sure.
I do think that these types of brands can take some notes from some of the newer recovery, addiction recovery kind of brands. So, like, Annie Grace is one that comes to mind in the 30-day alcohol experiment. You know, she does a great job of talking about how relapse is part of the process.
Hmm.
So don't shame yourself in getting back to day one. In fact, come back and join our community and talk about that experience and be supported by all kinds of people who have fallen off the wagon many, many, many times. It's part of the process. And the more that you can have that mentality of a fail forward, the less likely you are to be in this like pit of despair and shame, like, oh, I failed again. I can't trust myself kind of thing. It's more like change is cyclical. Go through those cycles and keep moving, right?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And then that's a brand I'm not really familiar with, but right after this, I'm going to go look that up. I love the idea that it's called an experiment too. An
Oh, yeah.
experiment suggests that it's iterative and
That's it.
it's trial
Yep.
and that, you're going to try a bunch of things until eventually, the experiment comes out with a successful outcome. I really love that. That's
Yeah.
super interesting. Yeah.
It's perfect timing for dry January, by the way, if you're
Yes.
wondering.
Okay. Are you dry January?
I did So Bemver this year. I might do a dry January. We'll see.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think last time you came and visited me in Utah, y'all were dry,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we did a whole year. Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so we again, relationship with, addiction and relationship with whether it's food, alcohol, caffeine, cigarettes. I'm not gonna speak to, like, cocaine and heroin or anything like
Yeah, I'll be straight to
sugar.
things you have personal experience with, yeah.
Right, again, I'm not a behavior change expert, but I just think that, um, the mentality of change is cyclical really resonates with me because it helps me create experiences that are additive into transformation. And
Mhm.
I think if more brands had this perspective, they could see these opportunities more clearly to help people really embrace these experiments and try again and try
Yeah.
again. And now they'll increase customer lifetime value and all of those good revenue building
Sure.
things.
Yeah. This subject is really, really fascinating, and looking at marketing through a change lens. It's just a different way of thinking about things. And I can see how this can apply. Earlier when you said I asked you the question of like what brands is this made for? And you said membership brands. I'm even thinking about I'm an American Express member since
Sure.
I don't know, 1990 or something like that. And I actually think, at least at the platinum level, they do a really good job of engaging and re-engaging people at places where they fall off. I mean, they have a very high price point for membership, but they're always checking in with me and they're always adding value to the relationship, and they are acknowledging for me, kind of what I'm going through. In that, I mean, credit card usage is it doesn't seem like something that's changed, but credit card usage, if you look at it as especially on the business side, I'm thinking specifically like business platform, platinum, it is something that can be transformative for my business because it gives me access to things that up level me, up level my business, up level my experience of being in business and things like that. And so I can see applications for this even outside of health and wellness. EO being a great example of that. And like, I've been a marketer and communicator inside of EO for probably a decade now. And it's something that the organization really struggles with. I want to, in the last couple of minutes that we have, just to kind of go back and recap some things and give the audience some, really strong takeaways. Like what are the things that you want people to walk away from this conversation with?
Sure. Yeah. Gosh, we've covered a lot of ground in an hour. We're fast talkers.
We are fast talkers, and also, we have sort of I'll say like a conversational shortcut, like our synapses fire against each other pretty well. So it works out really well.
Especially
Most
on a
of the
scale.
people that I bring on are great conversationalists anyway. That's kind of part of one of the requirements to be here.
Of course. Well, so I think when we started the conversation, we had talked about the word transformation, and I do think that's an important point. Like, stop using that word so flippantly. Think about it in terms of if you are in the business of transformation, think about the journey of that transformation and maybe look for opportunities to communicate your process toward transformation. Don't just like offer it as the outcome. The product is the process.
Hmm.
It's not, people buy into the outcome of that, but be more specific and detailed in how people get to transformation versus just saying you'll be transformed after you do this thing, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, that sounds like snake oil, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So, communicate your process to transformation. Don't expect people who aren't ready to take action to take action. You can
Hmm.
communicate with them, but maybe look at your metrics in a different way for marketing to audiences who are not ready to take action. Our experience with EO was really important in that way. You're such a great advocate for brand awareness. The membership in making the investment to marketing EO had that like, where's our ROI? Where's our cost
Yeah.
per
Yeah.
lead?
We want conversions. We
We
want
want
lead
conversion.
generation. Yeah.
And you are very good at helping manage those expectations and saying, it's not about that for this audience.
Hmm.
So I think if people aren't ready to make a change, they're not going to, but stay in front of them.
Yeah.
Um, find out why your customers are stepping off. Make sure that you have an exit survey in place for when they sign off to your product or service, and then learn from that and then try to get them back with really empathetic and
Mm.
compassionate language versus like 90% off and this, you can get back on the train.
Yeah, I think like that's like a huge aha to me. Just, communicating with empathy and understanding and showing people also there are others in your same situation. There's no shame in your game. And, we're here for everyone, not just the people who have the outcome that's desired, on the first try. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think of this is a huge opportunity. One of the first questions we ask new clients is like, tell us about your customer retention.
Hmm.
If their retention rates are low or they have opportunity to expand that relationship, that's the first thing we recommend. Well, have you asked them? So go back and ask them, and then let's talk about how we solve for that problem
Hmm.
with relevancy and compassion.
Yeah. I love that. The whole asking customers thing, it's interesting because our business is similar to yours in that way. And we often start off when we kick off with a client to either create new brand strategy, reignite, up level, refocus, whatever, we're like, well, what's going on with your customers? And I will say 9 times out of 10, 99 and 44, 100% of the time, the response is like, we don't really know. We're not talking to our customers. We haven't had a conversation with them in a really long time. We don't understand where people are falling off and why. And we don't understand like what are the gaps between interest and action to get them back on board with whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the category is. And so, I advocate for making sure that you're always having conversations with your customers, and it's not just after the fact. It should be all the time. And I've written about this. I speak about this. This is, just saw your daughter in the background. Hey,
Yep.
Sydney. Yeah, and so this, like really, really staying alongside your customers and engaging with them over a long period of time is going to give you the greatest insight, because you shouldn't guess at these things. This is one of the biggest problems with marketing today is
It's
like,
shocking. Isn't it
yeah,
shocking? Aren't you like, why not? Why are brands so afraid to ask their customers
we don't
why?
want to hear bad news.
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't want to hear bad news. So we have just a couple minutes left. I want to get back to you with one last question, but before that, I want to say this is the last Brand New World of the year. I don't know who's coming up next and when, but tune in at the end of the year, and we'll have more of a schedule for you. If you are interested in being on Brand New World, meaning if you have a compulsion to share some information with other business leaders, leaders with the purpose of elevating in their own lives and their own businesses, go to this website that's there on the screen. It's debgabor.com/speaking. I guess there's an intake form if you want to nominate yourself or somebody else, or if you have some ideas of people that you want to see. I don't know everybody in the world. I know a lot of people in the world, and I'm never afraid to ask somebody to come on. We've had some incredible guests here. We've covered like every subject I can imagine, going back to the itty bitty shitty committee, to reinventing your brand, to talking about holistic wellness with our functional medicine doctor friend, a number of different coaches, consultants, change agents in the world. There's that word, change. And if you feel like you have something that you want to share with people, if you really, really are passionate about getting your message out there, please write to me via debgabor.com/speaking. So the last question that I have for you, Jackie, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think people need to know about you, about the Transtheoretical Model of Change, about change marketing, or even a topic we haven't talked about? This is your opportunity.
I think this is the year with all of this change going on in the world, this is the year to really embrace change. So whether it's a professional change in your life or a personal change or a big brand strategy change or whatnot, I really hope people will just kind of like be brave and dive all in and like really take those risks this year. I mean, this is the time to do it. There's a lot of shakeup in the world right now, and brave brands win, and progressive brands win. And so I think just the concept of going all in and really embracing change in your life coming into next year.
Well, that's super inspiring. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Well, my agency is Muse, museheadquarters.com. You can reach us there and also download our report on the patient perception for functional medicine. It's a really interesting read, even if you're not in the field.
Awesome. Great. Well, Jackie, I want to thank you. This has been so fun. The conversation went really quickly.
Oh my gosh, I know.
I
Thank you
know
so much.
we're almost at an hour here. I want to wish you and your family and all of your loved ones and the amazing humans who work with you. You have such a great team, and I've had the pleasure of working with several members of your team, and you know that I love you guys. Everybody, happy holidays, a great end to the year, and looking forward to next year. And thank you again, and everybody who's watching Brand New World. We'll see you next year. Thanks for being part of our community and supporting Brand New World. And everybody have a happy, healthy holiday. Make good choices. And we will see you in 2022. Bye, Jackie. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Deb. Thanks, everyone.